All right, so for these 6 problems, it's similar to the example problem we gave before about the gym, where we have an equation that is one variable is expressed in terms of other numbers and variables, and we want to instead express it for a different variable. So for example, question number 1 tells us that g equals a divided by c. But we want to solve that for a. So if I have g equals a divided by c, if I were to multiply both sides by c, if I multiply this side by c and this side by c, the c's over here cancel. And I'm left with a equals c g. Oh, I made it a q. Sorry, c g. So what does A equal? A equals CG. So again, like our last equation, if we had to solve for A, now we know what A equals. A just equals C times G. For our next one is very similar. U equals A divided by K. I'll write it up here. U equals A divided by K. If I want A alone, the opposite of divided by K is to times by K. And if I multiply one side by k, I have to multiply both sides by k. And so the k's cancel. So I'm left with a equals ku. For number 3, once again, it's asking us to solve for a, but I have a minus c and plus b. So I need to add c to both sides. And if I do, I'm going to end up with g plus c equals, that cancel, a plus b. But I want a alone, so I would subtract b from both sides. And if I do, on this side I have a, and on this side I'm going to have g plus c minus b. So I know that a equals g plus c minus b. For problem 4, it's asking us to solve for a, and I have a plus m. The opposite of plus m would be to minus m. So if I minus m, these are going to cancel. But I obviously can't do it to one side of the equation. That's not in balance. So I'd have to do it to both sides. So I end up with a equals n plus p minus m. And there's my literal equation for a expressed in terms of the other variables. Problem 5 is g equals r plus d plus x divided by c, and I want to solve for x. Okay, well, I just have to do a couple different things. First, I'm going to subtract r from both sides, again, keeping it in balance to get rid of this r, to start helping isolate x. So I have g minus r equals d plus x over c. Now I can subtract d from both sides to get rid of the d over here to help isolate x. And I'm left with g minus r minus d equals x over c. And it's x divided by c. So the opposite of x divided by c would be to multiply by c. And if I do it to one side, I have to do it to both sides. Now that cancels. And so on my left side, I have c times g minus r minus d. And that's going to be equal to x. So our answer is just going to be x equals c times g minus r minus d. That could be one answer, or depending on what depending on what you were doing, you may want to distribute that, and so call that x equals cg minus cr minus cd. Either of these answers would be appropriate, and again, if it's a multiple choice, it'll give you one of those two answers, and you could pick whichever one it is. Finally, for 6, I have x minus c equals d plus r over y. I want isolate x alone. and it's x minus c. So the opposite of minus c would be to add c. And if I do it to one side, I have to do it to both sides. So the c's cancel, and I'm left with x equals d plus r over y plus c. So that might be one answer that you might want to leave it like that. But if I wanted to add c to this one, I'll write it up here. If I have x equals d plus r over y plus c, if I wanted to put it all together in one expression, get rid of this plus c, if I multiply this by y over y, I'm just adding fractions here, that would get me x equals d plus r over y plus cy over y. Now I have a common denominator, so x equals d plus r plus cy, and that whole thing over y. So it totally depends on which, again, if it's a multiple choice question, it'll give you either this one or this one. And if you were doing it on your own, you'd have to determine which one would make your life easier. Is it easier just to have add all these things together and divide by y, or add these two things together, divide by y, and add c? It would just depend on which one, with the type of numbers they were giving, which one is easier. But either of these would be an acceptable answer.